this sheet right here, up here, you don't have to get it out. We just estimated the percent of a number, right? Now we're going to set up and solve a proportion to solve percent problems. So I want you to write that at the top of your notes right here. I can. We're always starting out with that I can statement. I can set up and solve a proportion. Okay. Now if I stop right there, that was unit 1. We did that. We set up a proportion, right? If they can run 2 miles in 14 minutes, how many can they run in 3.5, right? Okay, but I'm going to add to this. So what I'm going to add to this is I can set up and solve a proportion to solve percent problems. So that's usually how it goes with math. I teach you something, and then you see it again later, except you use it to help you with something else, right? Okay? So let's take a look at this. And what we're going to do to do this example is I'm going to have you think about it's fall, right? The leaves are falling. And I'm asking you to think about, how many of you have a little brother or sister? Okay? How many of you are a little brother or sister? And if you had your hand up for both, you're in the middle, right? Okay? Because you got them both. So let's say it's fall. And you want to buy some Christmas presents for your friends, so you need to save some money and you need to make some money, okay? Which means that you're going to get a rake and you're going to go up and down your street and you're going to knock on your neighbor's door and say, do you need me to rake your leaves for you? Or if it's December, you're going to say, can I shovel your snow for you? And then how many of you have done that before? Okay, I have kids. Yeah, lots of hands. Okay, so let's keep that scenario in our mind, because here's what I want you to think about. I want you to think about a few things. There are 3 things that come into play when you go out with your little brother or sister. You have a certain amount of money that you make total, right? So I want you to do 3 things. The amount that you make total. Then, let's say that you promise, if your little brother or sister goes with you, that you'll give them a cut of what you make. And that cut is in the form of a percent, right? So, depending on how much you like your little brother or sister, you may say, I'll give you 50%, which kind of would be fair, but if you're the older brother or sister, you're supposed to torture them, right? So, you should say, I'll give you 15% of whatever I make. And then, of course, you'll probably make them do all the work, right? So the percent that you promise to give them, okay? And then the third thing that's going to come into play is the dollar amount that percent ends up being, right? Do you agree with that? So I made this amount. I promised to pay you this much percent. And this is the dollar amount that you actually pay. That's the portion. Do you know what I mean? It's the portion of your total. It's not your whole total, right? Yeah, otherwise you would say, I'm going to go out and I'll give you 100% of what we make. Well, then why would you even go? Just have them go, right? Okay. So we're going to do 3 kinds of problems. 1, where I give you these 2 and ask you this. The second one is going to be where I give you these 2 and ask you for this. And then the third one, so basically every problem, either one of these is going to be missing. So let's start by doing this, because guess what? The whole name of the game is using a proportion, right? So I want you to write the word or highlight the word proportion. Okay? That's the key. Which means on every single one of your practice problems today, I need to see 2 fractions. Agreed? I know there are other ways that you're doing this, but I'm giving you all these different ways, okay? So let's talk about this. Let's say that I make $43 and I promised to pay my little brother, we're just going to say, not that, 18%. I make $43. I promise to give them 18% of whatever I make. What question am I going to ask? Dominic.
18% of 40.
I love that you just put that in a sentence because that's what this is going to be all about. So I want you to look at what I have right here. That's not a big old story, is it? That is just a question. So what question am I asking you? I'm asking you 18% of 43 is what number? Right? Is there another way to say that or phrase that sentence? Yeah, it's not really changing it up too much. You might see what number is 18% of 43, right? What number is 18% of 43? Okay. I need you to be prepared to read these either way. Now let's fill in the proportion, which is really easy. If you have a dark marker, this first fraction is going to be your percent. So I'm going to put that 100 in big, dark, bold because it's always going to be 100. Side note, if you have a fraction with a denominator of 100, what do you know for sure is the numerator then? The percent, right? So watch. If you got 83 out of 100 right on your test, what percent did you get? You got an 83%, right? So all I need you to know is that if you know the percent, a different way to write it as a fraction is to just put it over 100 and call it a day, right? Right? So what would 16% written as a fraction be? You don't have to reduce it. Yeah, that's all. So if my first fraction denominator is always going to be 100, what is always going to go in that spot right there? The percent, if you know it. Do you know it? Yes. Should I change it to a decimal? Should I make it 0.18? No, I don't need to. Do you know why? Because the 100's already there. So this is 18%. Do you agree? Follow me so far? So do you remember with proportions, we had 4 spots and we had to fill them in? The first 2 are like a piece of cake, right? That number is going to always be 100, and that number is going to always be the percent. Okay? Now, I got 43 and an X to put somewhere, right? So the what number is going to be the X? That's what I don't know. So stop for a second and listen, please. Hey, little bro, I just made $43. I promised you 18% of that. How much money do you owe him? So what number should go right here? The total. Okay? The total or the whole. Okay? The whole amount that you're talking about. What number should go in the top of the fraction? The portion or the part. Right? That's what a fraction is, a part to a whole. How much? You know another good way to think this is out of. So, out of my $43, how much would I give him? Okay, let's stop for a second. There was a lot of talking going on, but do you understand after all of this how I came to put these 4 numbers there? 18% of 43. You know the main number, but you don't know the portion that you owe them, right? That's step 1 is setting it up. Step 2 is solving it, right? Do you remember what we do to solve it? How do we solve proportions? Thank you. We didn't do it that long ago. I'm really glad that you remembered. Okay? Well, saying it and being able to do it are 2 different things. So let's see if we can remember. I'm going to multiply the diagonals. 100 times x is what? And 18 times 43. I have my calculator. You don't need to worry about yours right now. You could if you want. You don't have to. Okay? So then, what do I do? What this question is asking you is, 100 times a number gave me that number. What did I multiply 100 by? And you know how we can figure that out? Do you guys remember this step? By dividing it to cancel. That's why we teach you things in math, because they build on each other. And then don't use a calculator for this. Move the decimal over 2. Okay. Whew. So then what I do, because Mrs. D just taught us how to estimate, I'm going to ask myself if that's a reasonable answer. Well, 18% is kind of close to 20%, right? What would 20% of 43 equal? Oh, you know what? Did I use a totally different, I think I used a totally different, hold on. Let me just make sure. I used a totally different number than I did with my other hours. So we're going to stop for a second. And you know how I knew that didn't make sense? Because my estimate was off. And I'm combining two different lessons here. Because 18 times 43, you guys trusted me. It was 774. Okay? So change that in your notes. Sorry if you did it in color. I used fourth hours example. And 100 and divide that by 100 and you get, okay. So that's $7.74. So here's what I want you to think about. What is 10% of 43? 4.3. So 10 more percent would be 8.6, $8.60, right? But it's going to be a little lower than that because it wasn't a full 20% that I promised him. So is that a little lower than $8.60? Yep. Does my estimate make sense? I actually like that happened because I was doing my estimate in my head and I was like, that actually doesn't make sense. So I knew that this number was off, okay? So do you understand this first problem? Okay. All right. Yes, I'm glad. Maybe it was on purpose. Okay. So that was number 1. I want you to put this. Number 1, when you don't know the portion. When you don't know the portion. Do you know what the portion of it means? It means you only have a piece of it. So he didn't get the full 43. He only got a piece of that 43. Or a portion of it. Okay? So let's take a look at what happens here. If I were to say we had a good day. There were a lot of leaves. We ended up making $106. Okay? Now watch. I'm going to change it up here. Of that 106, I paid my little brother or sister, I paid them $41. What question am I left asking now? If I made I guess we could do this. Actually, you know what? I'm going to save this one for this here. I paid, this is going to, $41 to them. That was their portion. What I promised them, 35%. This one's a little trickier. I know the percent that I promised them. I know that 35% worked out to be $41. What don't I know? Ian. Yeah. How much did I actually make? What was my total collected? Okay. Now, you know how Dominic made a sentence that I said I really liked it? 18% of 43? That's all I was trying to figure out. This one's a little trickier. What sentence would I write? How about $41 is 35% of what number? I'm going to say that again. I want you to try to follow me. $41 worked out to be 35% of sum total. What number is that? So I want you to write this. 41 is 35% of what number? Okay? Yes. 41 is 35% of some number. So I want you to just kind of put a little box around this for right now. Okay? Then I want you to write your proportion. First fraction's piece of cake. What always goes here? 100. What goes above it? The percent. I'll put the percent in blue. The percent is 35. So having 35 out of 100 is the same as having 41 out of what? I'll say that again. Do you see why? Because here's the question. People last hour were like, I don't know where to put the 41. Does it go here or there? I want you to stop and think about it. Is 41 my portion, or was 41 what we made total? Portion. Yes. So having 35 out of 100 is the same as having 41 out of whatever the total was, right? So 35% of what number? I'm going to just see if that makes sense to you. So 35 out of 100 is the same as having 41 out of what? So you know what you do then here? Cross multiply. And that's going to give me 35x. I promise I'll do the math right for you this time. 41 times 100. You don't need me to do that math. That's what. Okay? There's a number out there that when I multiply it by 35, I get this number. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, but I can find out by canceling that out, right? So then 4,100 divided by 35. And you know what? I should have my float set to 2, but that's okay. 117.1. Okay. Ask yourself, is this a reasonable answer? I made $117.10. I promised my little brother 35% of it. He ended up getting 41. Does that sound about right? Well, what would 10% be? $11.70. $22. $33. 35 is a little bit more. Does that make sense? Yes. Okay. So this is number 2. Number 1, I didn't know my cut. Number 2, I knew how much I was getting. I just didn't know the total. Okay, what's the only one left we haven't done?
Is it okay if we go into the
Yes, yes. The only one I didn't give you out of our first one is now I want to do this problem. The one I had you write down before. I make 106. I end up giving him, let's just change the number so you don't get confused because it was 41. Make that a 4. What question am I asking you? What's missing? What don't I know, Izzy? The percent. So, can you phrase that into a question? What percent of this amount is that? What percent of 106 is 44? Right? So that's the trickiest part. Or could you say this? 44 is what percent of 106? Does that question sound a little easier? 44, okay? We make $106. My brother gives me 44 of it. What percent did he pay me? This sentence is key. 44 is what percent of 106? Or what percent of 106 is 44? Do you see how they're the same thing? Okay. You could, yep. All right. Now, the important part, can you fill in the numbers in the right spot. What goes here every time? What don't I know this time? So what should I put there? You know what I'm going to suggest? I'm going to suggest that you put P for percent, because we're going to have to do something different for our answer, aren't we? Now, where does the 44 go? Where does the 106 go? And don't always just assume that the bigger goes on the bottom. I'll show you why in a minute. How much did we make total? How much was my portion of that as the little sibling? So I need you to look at this proportion and see if this makes sense. Having 44 out of $106 is the same as having how much out of 100? Do you see why they're called proportions? Because we want to make them equal. And all I want to know is when that's 100, what's that? So let's do this. Cross multiply. 106 times P is 106P. 100 times 44 is 44 with 2 zeros. Divide by 106. And 44 with 2 zeros divided by 106 is 41.5. Now, 41.5 what? Dollars? Percent. I got $44. Do not put a dollar sign on that. That's not dollars. You got $44. Yes, you are finding the percent, which is why I recommended you put a P there. Because you're saying, otherwise use an X. Okay? Got it? Does that make sense a little bit? Because 41 out of 100 is the same as 44 out of 106. It's just a little more, right? Okay. So what if I gave you this question? Actually, I want you to look at your blue sheet, the back of it. Ready? Number 1 through 6 says, set up a proportion. You have to set this proportion up. So here's what I want from you. Every single one of these. And I'm even going to take this a step further and make it even easier for you. Because what number will go in the denominator of your first fraction every time? 100. Because that's going to be my percent. Yep. I'm doing like half of it for you. But hold on, we're not done yet. You know what else I'm going to do? I'm going to go back through and highlight what it's asking me for. What percent? And what percent? And what are the other ones asking? What number? What number? What number? What number? And it doesn't say what number, but it's the same thing. Okay? Well, next I'm going to go fill in my percents if I know them. Do I know the percent for number 1? No. So you know what I got to put? P. Do I know the percent here? Yeah, I'm looking right at it. What about here? So fill in all your percents. Okay. Now, I don't want to do all these for you because this is your practice. The hard part is this. Listen, please, as I'm going to give you a big hint. The hard part is figuring out now which one goes where. I have a 125 and an 11. Which one goes where? Which one goes where? So I want you to look at this. I want you to kind of put a little box if you have a... I'm going to do it in red. 30% of what number? 120% of 71. 176 of... So you can only do this on the ones that the percent is given. 88% of 51. Okay. How is this one different from these three? Do one of those Sesame Street. Which ones doesn't belong? Out of these 4, how is this one different than these 3? Just kind of study them for a minute. Be a detective. Ryan.
You added what number?
Well, I'm asking you, like, what do you think, Jaden?
On these ones you're saying 18 of 51, and on these one, on the other ones you're saying like is.
Yes. Look here. 120% of the whole. It's 176 of my total. 88% of my total. 30% of my total. I don't know my total here, do I? So, huge advice, because people are very confused where they should put it. So, it's 120% of this amount, right? This is 176% of 40, which is what number? So, this is 30% of what number? Is 150. So, that's kind of a little help that kind of says when you know the total, that's the total. If you know the total, that's where it goes. If you don't know the total, that's what you're solving for, right? So, your assignment is to finish the ones that I didn't do with you and figure out the answer. If you're solving for P, make sure you put a percent on your answer. You are not doing 7, 8, 9, and 10. You are just finishing 1 through 6.